With this session, we are going to start our journey with Python. Okay, so this is going to be our first chapter where we will study about the introduction regarding this programming language. Now this will be the outline of this introduction chapter. We will be covering this chapter in 4 video sessions. In the first video session, which is this one, we will introduce you to Python. We will also understand what is the meaning of a keyword, an identifier, and a variable. In the next session, under this chapter, we will study about various data types supported by Python. In the subsequent session, we will study about operators and expressions in Python. And in the last session, we will study input and output function for making your program interactive, and also how to do a type conversion between data types and how to debug and correct errors inside your program. With this slide, we are going to introduce Python and also some key terms related to computer programming. Now, the first thing that we are going to see is what do you mean by a binary machine or a low-level language. Now, next we will study what's a high-level language. Now, after that, we will see what's a programming language, and then what do you mean by a program and what's the difference between a compiler and an interpreter. Now, let us take an example to understand each of these terms in detail. Now, we are going to take a small example to understand these key terms. Okay, so here, as you can see in the picture, we have a programmer on the right side and we have a computer on our left side. Now, the first key term that we are going to study is called binary language. Binary language has only 2 elements inside it, that is 1 and 0. Now you should understand this is the only language that can be understood by the computer. So if you want to write a program or whatever it is, it has to be converted to ones and zeros before your computer can read it and execute it and show the result on its screen. So you should understand binary language is the best language for computer and computer loves it. Now let us see what is the problem with binary language as far as a programmer is concerned. Now we see programmer is a person like us. Now if you ask a programmer to write a small program in binary language using ones and zero just to add 2 numbers, he might have to sit in front of the system for 2 days to complete that program. It is almost impossible. So the language that is most comfortable for the programmer is the natural language that we use to communicate among us. Alright? For example, we say English. So this is the language which is most comfortable to us. Alright, but for the computer, the most comfortable language is binary language. So here we have a problem. So the language which the programmer knows very well, the computer cannot understand, and the language which is most comfortable for the computer, it is very difficult for the programmer to write a program with binary language. So how you can solve this problem? Now over time, the computer engineers or computer scientists have come up with many programming languages to solve this problem. Now some of these programming languages are called high-level languages. I will write it as HLL, high-level languages, because these languages are so close to English. So a person who understands English and elementary mathematics can read the code and to an extent understand what this program will do. So those computer scientists have created many high-level programming languages. For example, Java is a high-level programming language, C is a high-level programming language, then Python is an example for high-level programming language. So these programming languages are comparatively easy to learn and work by the programmer rather than ones and zeros. Now I would say high-level programming language is somewhere between. Now you have to make some effort as a programmer to come halfway to high-level programming language by learning it. So if you want to do a program on Python, you have to learn the constructs of Python, and that is the purpose of this course. We will be studying how to create a variable, how to write an if condition check, how to write a for loop. You have to study the way in which you have to write the code so that Python can understand it properly. Okay, so that is your job. So that is why I told you you have to come halfway, right, until here, right? So once you learn Python, you can write programming code inside a file, okay, using Python construct. This will not be written in ones and zeros. This will be written with Python programming constructs like if, for, while. That is why I told you it has much similarity with English and elementary mathematics, right? Less than, greater than, equal to, all these symbols will be used inside the program. So as our programmer is ready to do his part, he has taken the extra effort of learning Python, and then he has written a program using Python programming language. Now all the files that you have written using Python programming language should end with .py. Name of the file you can give anything. I will just give the name of this file as first. So this file name is first.py. So please remember that all Python code should have extension as .py. So now you should understand the programmer's headache is over. He has learned a high-level programming language and he has written his code in high-level programming language such as Python, and the file is ready. But still we have a problem, right? This file doesn't have ones and zeros inside it. So if you give this file directly to the CPU inside the computer, it is not going to work. So somebody has to convert this program into ones and zeros. So finally you can see this is the code that is written by the programmer in Python. So this file, you can call it as the source code. Okay, so the program file which is created by the programmer in high-level programming language, you call it as a source code. Now this source code, whatever the programmer has written, cannot be directly given to the system or the computer to execute it, because computer can understand only ones and zeros, and whatever is written inside this particular program is not ones and zeros, right? These are constructs inside Python. So now you should understand somebody should take this source code and convert it into ones and zeros equivalent program. So now you see that is this extra job. Okay, somebody has to take it from the source code, convert it to another file, and this file should have ones and zeros, which is actually equivalent to the program that you have written inside first.py. So who is going to do this job, converting the source code into binary code? Okay, now to do this job we have two options. You can either give it to a compiler or you can give it to an interpreter. Now it is up to the person who developed a programming language to decide that whether his programming language will use compiler to do this job or his programming language will use interpreter to do this job. Now the person who developed Python has decided that all Python programs will be using interpreter to convert Python code into corresponding binary code. Now let me explain to you how interpreter works. So now our programmer has written a Python source code, and this is the source code file. Now when you give this file as input to the interpreter, now interpreter will select the first statement from your program. Interpreter will read it, and then interpreter will convert that statement into corresponding ones and zeros. It will provide it to the computer. Computer will execute it, and once the execution is finished, the interpreter will go to the next statement. It will pick the next statement from source code. Interpreter will convert it to a different bit pattern because the code is going to be different, and that will be provided to the computer. Now computer will execute it. After that, interpreter will pick the third statement. It goes like that until your program is finished. So you should understand, interpreter works line by line. It will pick one line from your source code at a time. It will convert it into binary, execute it, then come back, take the second line. That is how interpreter goes, right? Now let us see what's the difference with the compiler. Alright, so now we have a compiler over here, and now assume that the programmer has programmed it using some other programming language called XYZ. Maybe it's a C programming language or Java. So now what compiler does is that it will accept this entire source code as one unit. Okay, it will read the entire file, and then compiler will create actually one big file as the output, and you call this file as object code. Now inside this file you will have binary language equivalent for this entire file. Okay, and once this entire object code file is created, now this entire file will be given to the system to execute at once. So now the system will finish executing everything, and now your program will finish. So that's the fundamental difference between a compiler and an interpreter. Interpreter takes one line at a time and execute it. Compiler converts the entire source code into object code, and after that only it will be provided to execution. So as far as we are concerned, we are interested in studying Python, so you should understand we will be using interpreter to convert our source code into corresponding object code for execution. So now let us continue with the slides. Now we will see some of the key terms with their definition. Now what is a program? Program is an ordered set of instruction for execution by a computer. Now this is trivial, you can understand what's a program. Now what do you mean by an ordered set? Now assume that you are writing a program to add two numbers together and print the result. So if I write a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20, and c is equal to a plus b, and after that I give the command to print the result of c. Now you can understand this program is logically correct. The order is proper. First I have stored value 10 into a, then I have stored value 20 into b. We will see how we can do this. Just now understand it logically. Now we are adding a plus b, so value 30 will be stored into c, and finally you are printing c. And now if I write the same program in a different order, for example, if I write c is equal to a plus b, print c, after that I write a equal to 10 and b equal to 20, you see this program is not going to give any proper result. Because once you try to add a and b, we don't know what is the value of a and b now, because the value of a and b is obtained at the later statements. So you can see in the first option, the order is correct. In the second option, the order is wrong. So what I wanted to understand is that program is an ordered set of instructions. If you mess with the order, then your program will not give the proper result. Now what do you mean by a programming language? That is language used for writing these instructions. Okay, so using a programming language, you can actually write a program. Now what is a binary language? Now it is also called as machine language or low level language. So this is the only language that can directly understood by the computer, right? And it always has only zeros and ones inside it. Now what do you mean by high level language? These are easier programming languages created for the comfort of the programmers. So it's easier for the program to write programming language. Now examples are Python, C++, Java. It's a big list. Okay, if you Google, you can understand there are hundreds of high level languages already in play, and we are just trying to learn one, which is Python. Source code is the program written in high level language. So that's what I told you. If you create a file with Python code inside it and you name it with .py with some name before it, you can see this file is actually the source code. Now after that, based on the language that you select, you can either go with a compiler or with an interpreter. If you select Python as the language that you are going to use to code, then you are going to use Python interpreter to convert your source code into corresponding binary language. So both of them, compiler and interpreter, converts the source code to binary or machine language, and Python uses interpreter. They have fundamental difference in the way in which they work. Now we already discussed that before. Now why we have selected Python as the programming language that we are going to study? Because Python have many inherent advantages. Okay, so we are going to see some of them. Features of Python include, it's a high level language, so it is easier to learn. It is free. You don't have to pay anyone to download the Python interpreter and use it inside your system. It is open source. The way in which the Python interpreter is written, the source code is available for you. You can download, you can read and understand how Python interpreter works. Okay, and it's an interpreter language. It's very easy to understand, and the structure of writing a Python language is relatively simple. Now there are some things you should know. Python is case sensitive, which means that small letter and capital letter characters are seen as different characters inside Python. For example, if I write two words, false, and the next word, again I'll write false, but this time the first character is capital letter. Now according to Python, these two are different things. They are not equal. because here the first character is small letter and here the first character is a capital letter. So it is considered as different word. So that is why we say Python is case sensitive. Next advantage of Python, it is portable, which means that Python code can run properly in any platform. It can run in your system, it can run in your tablet, it can run in your mobile phone, it can run in Linux, it can run in Windows, it can run with your Apple machine which is running Mac operating system. So you can write a Python program in your computer and you can send it to any of your friend and they can run the same program in whatever machine they have. So that is why we say Python programs are portable. Now next you see Python has a very rich library, which means that when we study the subsequent chapters, you will understand there are many functions called built-in function which is already coded and written inside Python itself. So for example, if you create a list like this, okay, 2, 5, 1, 6, 8. I know that we haven't seen what is a list, but just understand this is a set of numbers stored inside a construct. If you want to sort it in ascending order, which means that you want to change the order of these numbers and you want to make it like this, 1, 2, 5, 6, 8. So now you can see it is in ascending order. Now to convert these numbers into this combination, you just have to call a function called sort, which is already written inside Python when you download it. You don't have to write a code for that. You just have to call this name sort and automatically these numbers will be sorted and given to you. So that is why we say Python has a very rich library of functions. So once you know all those functions, you don't have to write code to achieve that. You just have to call those functions. It will do the job for you. So the time for you to write the source code will be reduced by a large margin because much of the work is already done and kept inside the library. You can directly use it. Python is extensively used in website development. You can see some of the major websites which we use every day is powered by Python. For example, Google, Instagram, YouTube, Netflix, all are coded using Python. Now the next advantage is that Python by default use indentation. So I would say this is a huge advantage when you compare Python with others. Okay, so indentation I would say is like formatting a big document into paragraphs. So by default Python enforces this. So when you are going to write a Python program, you have to write it into different blocks, right? So if you don't follow that, Python will give error. So you can make sure that every person who has written a Python code will actually write the program into proper blocks. Now what exactly is indentation, I will teach you when we start to write our first program. Now that we are convinced Python is a great programming language with all the advantages, so now it is a good time to download Python. Now in this slide, I give you two options to download Python. You can either download Python from www.python.org or you can download this Thony IDE from thony.org and automatically Python will be installed along with it. In this course, in this program, we will be using Thony IDE. If you're following this course, I would recommend you to install Thony. Just go to this website and then you can download it and you can install it. It's very easy process, but if you have any problem, there is another video which I have created and in there I have actually gone step by step how to install Python interpreter from python.org and also how to install Thony from thony.org. So now let's assume that you have finished installing Thony IDE and now we will proceed to the next slide. Next, we are going to study about different execution modes supported by Python. So Python supports interactive mode and script mode. We will be using script mode almost all the time. So in interactive mode, the problem is that you cannot save your program. It is used only for testing purpose. For example, if you don't remember how this particular statement has to be written and you want to check whether any error will be created in Python by doing so, you can just write in interactive mode and see the result. But if you are writing a serious program, always we work on script mode. So the advantage of script mode, you can see you can save the file. And when you save the file, you have to give the name of the file as filename.py. So always remember this. Python program should end with .py. So for example, we have created a program over here. So this is a very simple program. Don't worry about the first line now. That is just a comment. We will study comment soon, okay, in the coming slides. So our program starts with the statement, okay. So value 10 is loaded into variable A, value 20 is copied into variable B. After that, I will add the value of A and B, so that is 10 plus 20, so 30 will be evaluated, and 30 will be copied into variable sum. And now I will print the value of sum. So in the output, you will see the result as 30. Now let us see what's the difference between with these two execution modes with Thony IDE. So I have just opened my Thony IDE. You can see the part above. This is where you can write the program and save it in a file. And what you see below, you can see it's written shell over here. Now if you are going to work on interactive mode, then you are going to write your program in your shell. So here you can write like A equal to 10. So now you can see value 10 is stored into A. Now B is equal to 20. Now 20 is stored into B. Now after that, I will say sum is equal to A plus B. So now value 30, which is actually the sum of A and B, is stored into variable sum, okay. And now if you want to see some result, you have to call print to print the current value of variable sum. And now when I press enter, you see the result of our program as 30. So this is one way of writing the program. This is called interactive mode. But the problem is that you cannot save these 4 lines of code that you have written. Once I close my Thony IDE and after that I open it, you can see the program that you have written is lost. That's why I told you always it is better to work on script mode. Now let us see how script mode works. Now in script mode, you are not going to write the program in the shell, but we are going to write it in a file. Okay, so here you can see already a file untitled is open for you. If you don't find it here, you can click on this button new and you can create any number of file that you want. Okay, so I'll just close all the other ones. I require only one now. So to this file, you can write your program. So I will just write the same program. So I have written the 4 lines of code, and after that, before you can run it, you have to save it. Now to save it, you have to click on this button. Now you can save it in any place inside your system. So I'll be saving it in this location. You have to give a name for the file. So I will give name as add. Now you can see the save type is selected as a Python file. So automatically .py will be added to this file name. Okay, so you don't have to write it here. So I click yes. So now you can save it. So now you can see on the top, it is written add.py. Okay, so now we have saved this program. And after that, to execute it, you just have to click on this green button over here, which says run current script. Okay, or you can press F5. So now when I click on this button, so now your interpreter is running add.py and result 30 is printed, because I have printed the value of sum inside the program. Now the advantage of script mode is that if you close this file, you don't lose your source code. You can always go to file, open, then you can go to wherever you have saved it. You can see add, our file is here, you double click on it, you get your program back. So that is why I told you in our course of study, we will be always writing program in script mode in separate files. Okay, so now let us continue. Now we are going to study about keywords in Python. Now there are some words in English which are reserved inside Python with special meanings. You should clearly know this list of words. Why? Because it should be used only for its intended purpose. You should not use it anywhere else. This will confuse Python and mostly it will give error. So keyword should be used only for its purpose inside the program. Now there are a total of 33 keywords that is defined inside Python. Just refer any Python book or read your text. You can see all the 33 keywords listed inside it. Now some of the example keywords are false, true, if, else, while, for. So there are 33 words like this. So these words have special meaning inside Python. Now you should see the false and true starts with a capital letter. So if you write a word false, which is starting with a small letter, so you should understand this is not a keyword, because this false and this false are different. Because I already explained to you that Python is case sensitive. Now to remember all the 33 keywords, it's sometimes difficult. So there is another way. So you can check the color code in Thony to identify the keywords, because you know that if, else and while, these are keywords for sure. So if you write another word called return, okay, and you are not sure whether return is a keyword or not, just check the color that the IDE has given for while and return. If they are same, it is an indication that return is also a keyword and you should use only for its intended purpose. Now, just to make it clear what's a keyword, let us just see this sample program again. Now, the first three statement is same as with the previous program. Now we have an if condition check. I already told you if is a keyword, and after if, Python expects a condition check. Right? So right now when you add 10 and 20, the value of sum is 30. We have seen this in the previous program. Now the if condition is checking whether 30 is greater than 25. You can see this is true because the value of sum is 30. Right? So when it is true, the statement inside if will execute. It will print go to next level. So what I want you to understand is that after this keyword if, Python expects a condition check. Now, for example, if you decide to use this if to store some value, for example, inside the program, you use like if is equal to 30, this will give error. Now, don't assume that Python will copy 30 into this variable if. That is not going to happen. Why? Because when Python interpreter sees this word if, it understands it's a keyword. And after if, Python expects a condition check. So if it doesn't see a condition check after if, automatically it will give error. So now let us run this program and see the result. You can see the program name I have given as 511. That represents the 5th chapter, first part, first program. So the same file is uploaded in a website, www.lenslearn.com. so you can actually visit our site. So you can download the code that is used in our entire course from there, and then you can see this video so that while seeing the class itself, you can execute this program in your machine and see the result. So now our program is ready. Okay, so here you can see if is a keyword, and that is why Tony is showing it in a pink or a rose shade, okay, or you can see a pinkish color. So the color will be different. Maybe when you open Tony, it might be gray in color or maybe yellow in color. Whatever be the color of this keyword if, all keywords will be having the same color inside the program. Now, for example, if I am going to write a word return and I don't know whether it's a keyword or not, and if I try to assign some value into it, this is going to give an error. So I will save my program and I will execute it. Now you see it's a syntax error. So now you will be wondering why we have this problem, because this is just a variable and I'm trying to load 10 into it, but Python is creating error because this word return is used for a different purpose inside Python. So how do you understand it's a keyword? You see the color. The color used for if and color used for return is same, which means that return is also a keyword. If I just write here if equal to 10, okay, for example, I'm trying to store value 10 into if. So now if I save the program and execute it, you can see again error will come. Now we have a small quiz here. Now you're asked to select the options which are not keywords in Python. Okay, so just pause the screen, just go through it. You can understand what all words are keywords and what all words are not keywords. If you want to attempt more quiz based on each video session that we cover in this course, I again request you to visit our website www.lenslearn.com. We have created quizzes corresponding to each video session that we cover in this course. So just after seeing the video session, you can always go to our website, you can attempt the quiz and you can make sure that how far you understand the concepts. Now to see the results, now you can see false is not a keyword because it is starting by a small letter. If it was capital letter, it is part of the keywords, right? Now you can see go is not a keyword, local is not a keyword. You can check all the 33 keywords to verify this. You can see with, return, try, else are defined as keywords in Python. Next, we are going to discuss about identifiers. When you write a Python program, you have to create so lot of names inside it. You have to give name for each value that you are going to store in Python. You are going to give name for each function that you are going to write inside Python. So how can you define a proper name inside Python? So for this, you have to understand the rules for naming identifiers inside Python. Okay, so as I told you, identifier are names used to identify different variables and functions and different things inside Python. So now let us see what are the rules for creating a proper identifier or a name inside Python. Now see the first rule. It says that a proper identifier can start with capital letter, small letter, or with an underscore. So now you can understand an identifier cannot start with a number like 7, 8, 9, something like that. You can start either with a small letter or a capital letter or an underscore. Followed by that, any combination of numbers or letters or underscore are allowed. So after you have started the identifier with a small letter or a capital letter, maybe C, after that you can have numbers or underscore or capital letter, small letter, any combination. Python doesn't care about that. Now the maximum length of an identifier is not limited, so you can have a big name used for storing something inside your program, but it is not recommended. Now the fourth rule says that identifier should not be a keyword. So you should not create identifier with name, if, for, or while, because those are keywords. And the last rule, special symbols other than underscore. So underscore is allowed. This is allowed, right? But other special symbols like hash, @ dollar, percentage, these things are not allowed when you create an identifier. Now on the right side, you can see a sample program. In this program, we have some valid identifiers. So here you can see A is a valid identifier, B is a valid identifier, C is a valid identifier, sum is a valid identifier, right? If is a keyword. You should understand this is different. So again, we have a quiz here. You have to select the option which are not identifiers in Python. Now you can pause the screen if you want more time to work on it. Now these are the answers. Now why the first option is not an identifier? Because it is starting with a number. That is not allowed. Option B, option C, and option D are all right. We don't have a problem. Now why option E is not a valid identifier? Because we used a special character hash, which is not allowed. The only special character allowed is underscore. And you can see the last option G. Why it is not an identifier? You can see it is starting with a character. It doesn't have any special characters inside it, so everything is proper. So what is the problem with assert? The problem is that assert is a keyword, and we have a rule saying that keyword cannot be used as an identifier. So even assert cannot be an identifier. Next, we are going to discuss about variables. Now we should know the name of the variable is fixed according to the rule of setting an identifier. Right? Variable are placeholders for storing value inside your Python program. So here you can see A is a variable which stores the value 10 inside it. B is a variable which stores value 20 inside it. C is a variable which stores value 30 inside it. And A plus B plus C, so 50 will be evaluated on the right side after adding the value of these variables A, B, and C. Now 50 is stored into a new variable sum. In the next statement, I am printing the value of variable sum, so 50 will be printed. So right now you should understand even this small program has many variables inside it. So what's a variable? These are items or objects stored inside memory where you can store values inside it, identified in the program by a unique name, and this name is called as an identifier. So that is why I told you the name of a variable is written based on the rules of identifier. A value assigned to a variable can be a number, it can be a character, or it can be a combination of number and character. You call it as a string. Variable creation is done by the assignment operator or equal to operator. So here you can see I have created 4 variables just like that. First statement, you can see the variable name is mark, and I am assigning an integer 76 into mark. Now the next statement, I am creating a new variable with name average, and 81.67, that's a floating point number that is stored into average. But don't worry about this integer and floating point now. We will study that in the next video session. Now after that, I'm going to create a new variable place, and inside that I'm going to store a group of characters clubbed together inside double quote. So this is called as a string, and this entire value New Delhi will be stored into this variable place. And after that, in the last statement, you can see I'm creating a new variable grade with a single character value a, and that is stored into this variable. So here you can see for creating these variables, I have used the assignment operator, equal to operator. Okay, so that is what we have discussed here. So now let us continue. Now here we are going to discuss about comments. Now you see the program on the right side. Actually your program starts from here and ends over here. So when you give this program to the Python interpreter, your Python interpreter is going to start from this line. So now you will have a small doubt, what happens to the first 3 lines? It is part of the program, you can see it is written inside the Python file, but still I say the Python interpreter will start from a equal to 10. You can see the first 3 line starts with a hash. So whatever line which starts with the hash is called as a comment. So it is seen as an explanation or a note that you are going to write to define the purpose of this program. So that will be written in plain English. So here you can see in the first line I have started with hash and I say this is a sample program. In the second line I say it finds the sum of 3 numbers, and in the third line it says this program also checks an eligibility criteria. So assume that you have written this code and sent it to your friend, okay, without the comment, only the program part. So now when your friend open this file, he will start to read a equal to 10, b is equal to 20, c is equal to 30. So he has to read the entire program to understand what is the purpose of this code. But if you are little sympathetic to your friend, you can care about writing a few lines before the program to mention what is the purpose of this code. So now when you send this code, your friend just have to read the English explanation of what this program does. He doesn't have to read each line and calculate in his head and waste time to understand what is the purpose of your code. You just read the comments, it will be clear to him. Now to add a note in source code, you can use comment. It improves readability of your code. It is particularly useful when working as a team to develop software. So nowadays you can understand, if you work in a big company, you are not going to develop a software by yourself. So there will be a 10-member team. So you will be creating a piece of code which will be added to the big software. So when you write your piece of code, you have to write the comment properly, because finally all the 9 people is going to give their part of code to one person to join it and create the complete software. So if you give proper comment, he can clearly understand this part of the code does this job and this part of the code does this job. So he can actually combine them properly with ease and create the overall software which does the entire job. But if you don't give a comment, it's going to be a big problem for the person who has to combine this code from different people. That is why they say it's very useful to give proper comment when you work as a team. Always the comment starts with a hash, and everything that follows a hash until the end of line is excluded by interpreter. So interpreter doesn't see those lines. So when interpreter starts from the beginning, if it identifies that the first line starts with a hash, it will skip that line, it will come down. And now it sees the second line also starts with the hash, it will skip the second line. Now it sees the third line also starts with the hash, it will skip that line. And that is why I told you your interpreter will start over here. Okay, a is equal to 10, and then it will start executing your program. Comment is written for humans, not for Python interpreter. Now finally, you have to get an understanding of what is an object in Python. Any value or data item that is stored inside the memory of the computer inside Python is called an object. Every object in a Python has a unique ID, which is the representation of the memory where it is stored. For example, in memory, if you see this program, the first line a is equal to 10. So what happens here is that Python interpreter will create a new object in memory. The value of the object will be 10 and variable a will be referring to it. okay, and variable a will be provided with an ID. This will be a big number. It will be 161366175 something. That depends on the memory location that was allotted for storing a. So variable a will have an ID with some value. So every object in Python has a unique ID. This ID value will not repeat for another value stored in memory. Okay, so for example, the next line I have to store 20. So a new unit in memory will be taken. 20 will be loaded into it. It will create a new variable b, and b will be pointing to it. Okay, and b will have another ID value. It will be 16171356, something like that. These numbers will be different. ID represents the memory location of the object. That is what I have just explained now. Variables with same data will always have same ID. Here in this code, you see the next variable c is also having value 10. So now you see variable a and variable c both have same value. So now it will not create a new memory location to store 10 because 10 is already available in memory. It will create a new variable c and ask c also refer to the same memory location. Okay, so now you see c also will have the same ID as a because both of them are referring to the same memory location where value 10 is stored. That is why we say variables with same data have same ID. If you want to see what is the ID of an object, you can use this function. So you can give ID of a, it will print the big value, whatever ID is given to a by Python interpreter. Okay, so it returns the ID or memory location of that object. So now let us run this program, then it will be clear to you. Okay, so now our program is ready. You can see the first line starts with a hash. And after that I have written sample program, right? So interpreter is not going to do anything on this line because interpreter understands it's a comment. Okay, it's for humans, just for understanding. Now in this program we can see I am creating three variables a, b and c with this value. After that I am printing the ID of a, ID of b and ID of c. Variable a has value 10. Variable c also has same value 10. Now once you print the ID of all the three variables, you can see ID of a and ID of c will be same because they both are pointing to the same memory location where 10 is stored. But the ID of b will be different because b actually stores a different value, right? So it gets another memory location. That is why it is having a different ID value. So now let us run the program. So here you can see the first big number, that is the ID of a, and the last one is ID of c. You can see both are same. Okay. Now the middle one is the ID of b, and that is different because b have to store a different value. Now with this we'll wind up this session. After watching this video, I want you to go to our website, attempt the quiz for this particular session to make sure that how far you understood the concepts that we have discussed in here. Now in the next session we'll be discussing about data types in Python.